Hello, welcome to this session. It's called Health and Wellness in the Dispatch Center. I'm Andaz Lazar, and I am a retired dispatcher, Ann Arbor, Michigan Police, and the coordinator of the Washtenaw County Critical Incident Stress Management Team, and I'm also a BSW. In this session, we're going to talk about typical things that get to dispatchers, things that make doing your job difficult. Talk about ways to develop resilience, and then a wellness plan, which is not so much us developing a wellness plan, but I'm going to talk about what that might look like and the things that you might want to include. So 2020, the year that we probably all wish we could kind of skip over. Dispatch is always the lifeline between the public and help, but never more so than this last year. And so I just liked these quotes about that. They're actually from before last year, but I think that they apply very well. We are educated and trained professionals doing a job that not everyone is cut out to do. And it's important to remember that. I was just seeing on a Facebook page for dispatchers where someone's spouse said anybody could do this job. And those of us who have done it know that that is absolutely not true. And then dispatchers are hero coordinators waiting patiently to answer a cry for help. I like that, hero coordinators. You are first responders. You hear what's going on before anything has been done, and never on anybody's best day. People never call 911 because they're happy. The mental anatomy of a dispatcher is pretty remarkable, actually. When you think about all the stuff that you've got in your brain, you've got 10 codes, maybe more than one set of 10 codes, more than one set of phonetic alphabets, the voices of everybody, the contents of various manuals, NCIC, and whatever your state system is. If you're in law enforcement, all kinds of protocols for fire and EMS, and then personalities. And if you dispatch for more than one group, you might have a total change in culture between groups. And then last but absolutely not least, you have the ability to take everything that you've learned in the phone call where they've asked for help and boil that down to 30 seconds worth of radio transmission that tell the people who are responding everything they need. So pretty amazing, really. And so, no surprise, 18 to 24% of 911 dispatchers experience PTSD. This was a study initially in 2012 by Lillian Pierce that talked about dispatch specifically, so that was pretty cool. Not used to having things focus on dispatch. And so here's some percentage of PTSD in different areas of safety services. And the important thing to take from this slide is that 3 or 4% of people in the general population show signs of PTSD at any given time. So knowing that that is true, all of the rest of these areas of safety services, including dispatch, the incidence of PTSD is 5 or 6 times what happens in the general public. Another attribute of dispatchers is the ability to multitask. And this is huge, whether you call it multitasking or it has been called switch tasking, with the explanation that rather than actually doing a bunch of things at the same time, you're actually doing things right up against each other, or switch tasking. So doing something and then quickly pivoting to something else and then pivoting to something else. And all that while giving a lot of attention to detail, but having the ability to switch constantly on a dime. And then especially when you're in a dispatch center and you're taking calls, the ability to tune out what's going on around you, but then still listen with a little corner of your ear so that when you hear somebody else either say the name of the person you're dealing with or the address that you're dealing with or something like that, being able to hone in on that. It's really amazing when you think about it, all of the stuff that you have to deal with. And so again, same person, same series of studies in 2015, that about 25% of dispatchers show symptoms that are severe enough to warrant a diagnosis of depression. So not to say, in general, we're a pretty healthy group of people. You're a pretty healthy group of people, and deal with the day to day in an amazing manner. But we're talking today and all about stopping for a second and taking care of yourself. You have the compulsion to fix. We're chronic caretakers. So usually this is something for dispatchers that is true throughout their lives, throughout different parts of your life. So at home and maybe with your family, your children, and also your parents and that kind of stuff. We want to be able to fix it. And we're perfectionists. And this comes into play over and over again because not only are you perfectionist, you're also human. The perfectionist part, what struck me about this is absolutely, and of course, you want to do your job correctly all of the time. And absolutely, and of course, you're not going to be able to do that. But who goes into this job saying, well, who knows, we might do it wrong. You get usually no closure. You move on quickly to the next call. And so let me just speak to this real quickly from this point, actually, that one thing that can be very useful, especially in a time when I started out more years ago than I care to think about, we were in the police department, we were in the same building, and so people went through our office frequently. And so if we needed to find out what happened, what the conclusion was on a call that we had let go of, we could do that. And then over the years, it became more and more difficult. And it's becoming more and more the norm now that you're not in the same building. You may not even be in the same part of town. So it can be helpful to have somebody that you can call if you need to know the closure on something. Another thing that people come to in this job is that sometimes you don't need closure on everything. But for the things that you do need to, make friends and figure out who you can call when you need to know what happened. So all of this stuff takes a toll. Even all of those screens take a toll after a while. This goes back to being a perfectionist. Some might call that psychological inflexibility. You want to do everything right. So is that being inflexible, that I want everything to go right and I want to do everything that I'm supposed to do and not ever forget anything? But this can lay the groundwork for PTSD sometimes if you are inflexible in terms of how you want things to end up and how much control do you have over that. So let's talk a minute about your body's response to stress. I love this graph. It's a very good indicator of what goes on when you encounter stressful things. So on the left side of this graph is the start of your day. You come into dispatch and you do whatever it is you do at the start of your shift. Get a cup of coffee, put your food in the fridge, put stuff in your locker, and then at or about number 2 on this graph, you get the first thing that's stressful, the first phone call or the first call to dispatch. So everybody, when faced with stress, a new stress from outside, you have the fight or flight response. But what you also have is the freeze, fight, flight, or freeze. Freeze is another part of that equation and may happen before you fight or flight. So sometimes when we do crisis responses and include dispatchers, sometimes the things that they'll say is that they felt like they froze and they felt like they were frozen for a long time. Usually, if other people who are involved in the call speak to that, they will say that that was not true. What felt like a really long time to you was actually a couple of seconds, maybe. And then you went into the fight or flight thing. But that's a change in perception that you have when you're in a stressful situation. So you freeze, and then your body fights or flights. And so generally speaking, since you're on the job and you need to take care of whatever it is you do. So the line from number 4 to number 6 is while you're actively involved in the call. And so number 6, if you're a call taker, maybe when you hang up the phone. It may be, if you're the dispatcher, it may be when either the people that you dispatch are back in the station, or they're at the hospital, or they're at the end of whatever's the active part of this response. And so then all of the adrenaline that had you going up until number 6 dumps out of your body, and then you experience exhaustion. Except that you're not done, and you're probably not even ready for a break at that point. You're just ready for the phone to ring again, or the call taker to take the next call that you have to dispatch. And so now you're not at that baseline of functioning. You're up at number 8. So that is what we call hypervigilance, which means this call could get you going and cause a new surge of adrenaline, even though it may be something that's not important at all. It may be a request for directions, or somebody looking for information or something like that, but you're not going to see it the same way. So constant demands. Dispatch involves constant emergency. Body and brain lack the time for maintenance and rest and to get over it and to start up again. And it's just a cycle that continues and goes on, which is detrimental to physical and mental well-being. Okay, this is my own dispatch day, not scientific graph of what things might look like. I gave these incidents pretty random levels of stress on a stress meter. And so a noise complaint generally is a not very stressful kind of thing. A domestic is more stressful. If you're giving medical instructions, etc., requests for directions might be nothing. But you're going to react to these things differently. You might react to the request for directions. It might seem like a really stressful thing in your mind because you feel like you've just been through this thing that's a true emergency, and now you can't dial it back for this mundane kind of thing. So while the stress levels are random, the point is the graph. You go up and down and up and down a little, and up some more and down a little, and it's hard on your body. And then you've got people wanting to tell you a story. Dispatchers are responsible for all and really in control of none, because once you give them the call, once you take the information and send it on to the next person, you really don't have any control over whether people do what you know they need to do. And what matters most to dispatchers is that everybody that you send out at the beginning of the shift goes home at the end of the shift. I think that most people would agree that that is really their top priority. For dispatch, usually the worst calls are things that involve children, suicidal people. And so there's two different, the suicidal factor is worse if it's somebody that you know, either internal or external. And it's worse if if somebody is calling and you're getting it firsthand that somebody says they want to kill themselves. Shootings and unexpected deaths of adults. So what to do